to the Journey Mindfulness Podcast, where we explore the depths of human experience and the mysteries beyond. Today, we have the privilege of speaking with Kate Chasse, a retired librarian with an extraordinary background. Kate's life has been deeply intertwined with the phenomenon and other metaphysical experiences. From an early age, she has experienced the profound encountering a non-corporeal being at just 6 years old, an event that forever shifted her perception of reality, especially with the concept of life and death. Over the years, Kate has witnessed a number of UFO, UAP phenomena, including 8 distinct types of craft. These encounters have further solidified her belief or questions in the existence of realities beyond our current understanding. In this episode, we will delve into Kate's fascinating experiences, explore the nature of consciousness, and discuss the implications of these encounters for our understanding of the universe. Please join us as we journey into the unknown with Kate Chasse. Welcome, Kate. Thank you so much for being with us here today.
Well, thank you for having me. This is very exciting.
Well, let's begin maybe with that first experience when you were 6. That seems when it first started, right?
That's right. Yeah. So I was it was in the summer before I think I started kindergarten, if I remember correctly. And so was I 6? Or maybe it was starting grade 1. So I was 6 years old going on 7, I think it was. Anyways, that summer I saw my dog get hit by a bus. And he died instantly. And so as a 6-year-old experiencing this, I found this very, I mean, it's shocking, of course. And he was my buddy, but it also started getting me really thinking about death, dying. And, once he was dead, that was it. He was gone, and so that just really baffled me, and I found it very disturbing. And so I was waiting for my bus one day, just early, I think within the first week of school. And it seemed like the bus came to the front door and right in front of our house, I guess, good location or something. So I'm standing in the foyer of the house. So there's a door, the outside door, and then the inside door to the rest of the house. And the foyer is about 5 feet square and 9 feet high. And I'm standing there watching for the bus and thinking about, I guess I started thinking about dying, and I just really couldn't wrap my head around it. This idea of just that I would just cease to exist one day. It just felt wrong. It just really felt wrong. And all of a sudden, after thinking about this for probably about 10 minutes, I felt sort of like a presence enter the room, or entered the space. And so I could feel the sort of presence entering the space, but the more it seemed to enter the space, the more pressure I felt up against my body. And it's a strange thing because there was a physical aspect to it. It was as if like the space wasn't big enough for this being of some sort. I couldn't see anything, but I could definitely feel its presence, and I could feel this pressure, like it just didn't quite fit. And so we were both trying to stand in this space. So I'm standing there, like feeling this pressure against me, and all of a sudden a voice says out loud in a male baritone voice, and it comes from outside of me, and all it says is, "Death does not exist." And then as soon as it delivered its message, it receded from the space, and the pressure released. And that was it. I carried on with my day.
Yeah.
But,
Oh, wow. Did it feel like loving, or what was there an emotion?
It was neutral, very neutral. Yep. I didn't
Okay.
feel It was just sort of very authoritative. Death does not exist. Don't even think about it, kind of thing.
So
It's
very clear.
very clear. Yeah.
Wow. And you just went on your day.
It went on with my day. I never told my parents. I just somehow knew, I don't know. I just knew not to tell them. Uh, and I don't think they would have believed me. They, would have thought I was, childish things sort of thing. And but it stuck with me all my life. And I really felt like someone was watching over me and guiding me through my childhood. It stuck with me. And I always thought, no, there's that person there, whoever it was. I as a 6-year-old, thought it was God. I didn't know even about angels at that time. So to me, that was God, and God was watching over me. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Did you grow up with the religion at all, or?
Not really. So I'm from Quebec, and so every Quebecer, French Canadian Quebecer, is is born, is sort of baptized into the Catholic religion. But my parents left the church when I was about a year or 2 years old, and my grandmother still went on almost daily whenever there was a mass. She would go, and every now and again she would take me. And because in Quebec, a lot of the public schools are Catholic, um, so I got some little bit of religion, not
Mhm.
a lot, but a little bit in there when I was growing up. So I had an awareness of God and Jesus and
Yeah.
so on. And but my parents were agnostic and raised us that way.
Okay.
To not they didn't discourage, but they didn't encourage. It was left it up to us to
Yeah.
figure it out, I guess.
Well, I'm sure that experience, you know, made you pay attention a little bit more. What kind of moving along? I know you didn't have any experiences for a while after that. Is that correct? Or
Yeah, there were some dreams, flying dreams. And I had a dream one night, maybe when I was 12 or 13. There were demons flying around my house, um, going past my window around and around and around and trying to get at me, but they couldn't get at me for some reason. They couldn't get into my room, but in my dream, they were after me. So there were things like that. Um, Other than that, until I was in my 20s, I didn't really, the dreams were pretty sort of standard dreams for kids. I had a lot of flying dreams and so on, but nothing that's not too outside of the ordinary. So
flying in like on Earth or somewhere else or what?
flying on Earth. So if something would be chasing me, I knew I could just bounce, and I would bounce and then fly, you know. So I knew I could get away if something was chasing me. And I often dreamed, when I dreamed, I often dreamed it was nighttime. So it was always dark out. There was always stars in the sky. And it was always sort of somewhere in my neighborhood, near my neighborhood. So I almost felt like maybe sometimes, who knows, doing a bit of out of body travel or astral traveling while dreaming, because they were kind of consistent that way. But
Yeah, I know. I was curious about that. I wrote that out. Like, were these out of body experiences, do you think?
they might have been. I didn't know at the time. I just would wake up thinking, oh, I had this ability to fly. And it's funny, as I got older, I found it harder and harder to fly. I'd go to jump and I like, oh, I wouldn't be flying quite as high. And now I hardly ever have flying dreams,
Oh,
which is kind of strange.
when did they slow down, do you think?
Probably maybe by my 30s. I remember having one dream in my late 20s where I was standing sort of over, uh, like it was a 10-story building, and there was an atrium in the middle, so I was standing on the 10th floor, and I just dove off the 10th floor and was flying around in this atrium of this building. But that was the last flying dream I ever had. And that
So
I was maybe about late 20s, early 30s.
it's impressive to me that you remember that.
Well, it was fun. It was like, because I just like literally let myself. Oh, so there was two other dreams recently. I forgot about those, that I flew, but I had wings in those ones. I'll talk about those later. But yeah, it was fun because I had just dove off this 10th floor, and it was great big huge building, and the atrium was all open. And so I was just soaring around in this atrium.
Wow.
So I remembered it because it was so beautiful.
That's impressive. And like, they say, when we're younger, we don't have these filters, right? Or we haven't had these constraints put on us by society. And so our imaginations too, we just see possibilities, and it, tends to slow down as we get older and
Mhm.
experience life. But those are very interesting. So then how old were you when you had the experience with the light being? What could you tell us about that?
Yeah, so this was in 97. So how old would I have been? 34, I guess. And I was living in Toronto, and I was living in this old house, and I was on the second floor in an apartment, and it had a really, really long hallway from the bedroom to the bathroom. And one night in the middle of the night, 3 in the morning, something like that, I woke up and had to go to the bathroom. So I just got up out of bed, didn't turn on any lights, and walked down the long hallway to the bathroom. Went into the bathroom, turned on the light, did my business, turned off the light, and standing in front of me about a foot and a half away was this being that was about 5'10", um, and it was in the shape of a human, but it was made entirely of light. So I never saw any features. It was just the actual shape of a human, what I felt like was a male. And it had that light, but the brightness of light, like a star. When you see a
Mhm.
star, like so bright, but not blinding, just that beautiful, warm, bright light. And it appeared just as I turned off the light, or turned off the light, yeah. And then as soon as I saw it, I collapsed to the ground. I didn't experience any fear. I didn't sense anything from the being one way or the other. Um, but for some reason, my body just gave out and I collapsed to the ground. I didn't lose consciousness. And so I fell onto the ground. And when I, hands and knees sort of looked up, it was gone.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, but no fear. So it was like neutral again?
I didn't feel anything from the being at all, and
Wow.
no emotion from the being. And I didn't experience fear, but my body completely collapsed. So I didn't even have time to experience fear. I just went boom, right
It
down.
was so instantaneous.
Yeah. And I don't know if that's kind of beyond fear. It's like that fight, flight, or freeze
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of. I froze and just collapsed. I don't know. But it was pretty. It was, and then I went back to bed, got up the next morning, went to work, never told anybody about it because, like, who do you tell, right? Who are you gonna tell these stories to?
Well, years later on this podcast, what did you like? How did you go to sleep after that?
I did. I went to sleep. It didn't affect my sleep, and I don't know. It's the strangest thing. It just once I realized I was fine, I never actually experienced that surge of fear. I didn't get that. So it was like, oh, okay, well, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I have no idea what that was all about. And am I going crazy or what? Um, and so, but I had seen Cocoon, or I don't know, I think that movie Cocoon had played years earlier, and it kind of looked like one of those beings a bit. So I wasn't completely like, oh, well, like maybe that was some sort of, I didn't know what it was, but some sort of being of some sort, whether it's, extraterrestrial or what. Um, and I just went on with my life and
Wow. So you just it was this question in your head of like what was that?
yeah. And for years, I mean, of course, there was no internet back then, but I would always, go to the library or bookstores, like, some of those new age bookstores and try to
Yeah.
find stuff that you could read that would kind of help you figure out what's going on with me. I'm hearing voices, I'm seeing beings. I had seen UFOs at that point, so
Yeah.
what the heck is going on?
So you were 34 then, but you had already had your first UFO sighting.
Yeah, and that was in 92, so that would have put me at, what was I in 92? 29, I guess, something like that. And, yeah, so that sighting, was a very clear close-up sighting. I was walking in a park in Ottawa, actually, with, my roommate and his best friend, and we were just walking along about 11 o'clock at night. It was November. And there was snow on the ground and a low ceiling. And there are lights in the park, and it's those in Ottawa they use the more orangey tinted lights. So there's like a sort of an orange glow, and we could see well. Like it was because of the snow and the low ceiling, visibility was good. And all of a sudden, in the eastern sky, I see this object that it's huge. It's about 500 feet up and about 500 feet away. And it's about the size of two 747s. So, like, sort of had real mass to it. And it was in the shape of a football. And it had lights going around it, all the way around in this sequence: red, yellow, green, blue, all the way around. And the lights were um, about a foot and a half in diameter. The object itself, I figure, was hard to tell, but like 50, 60 feet in length and, 30 feet high, something like that, big football shape. And
I
the
mean,
light,
that's huge.
it's huge and close. And it was just sitting there. It was metallic, like a dull metallic color, gray, like a dark gray. And it just was sitting there, no sound. It was on sort of a slant, like it was just kind of tilted slightly. And it just disappeared. And then it reappeared in the western sky. And then it disappeared again, reappeared in its original spot, and then disappeared.
Almost like teleport, like it just
It
disappeared
didn't
and then
move. It
reappeared.
just went poof, wasn't there. Then it was there, and then it wasn't there, and then it was there, and then it wasn't there. Like there was no movement. Now, maybe it was going so fast that your eye couldn't see it. But from what we could tell, my roommate and I, the other guy missed the whole thing. Yeah, he missed the whole thing because it happened pretty quickly.
Hmm.
And I got my roommate to describe to me what he saw. So, which was maybe unfair because this way I knew for a fact, you know, uh, that it sort of made it really solid for me that what we had seen was real.
It validated what
Validated it. Yeah.
yeah.
And I got to have, in a way, I got to have the proof because he just literally what I told to you is what he told to me.
Hmm.
And it's actually made, how a story it can morph over time, right? But
Sure.
because he told me that, it solidified it in a way. So, and then I actually went home and wrote down what he had said and what I had seen. So, because as time goes on, your memory starts to fade. So,
Yeah. Well, I mean, thank goodness you were with someone else who saw it, right? It
absolutely.
makes it a
Yeah.
far different thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Because part of me didn't even believe what I had seen. As we were walking along, I was like, it feel like I was almost forgetting it. And And then when he said, "Oh, did you just see that? Did you guys just see that?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, you saw that? That was real." Like in my brain, I was just thinking that can't be real.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I know. I had a slightly similar experience where I was with somebody else and it
Oh,
was the oh my God. Like you
yeah,
saw you heard that?
yeah,
Yes, you did. Oh, thank God. You know, like
yeah,
I'm not crazy.
yeah.
Mm.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Okay. So you had this you are 29 when you had that. Now,
Yeah,
were your dreams impacted? So you were
yeah.
still having those pretty vivid dreams here.
I've always had the vivid dreams, but
Mm.
since that one sighting, my dreams took on a different tone. So I started uh, some of my best spiritual dreams happened after the sightings.
Okay.
And I had one really cool one before it, but then after that, it was, you know, after the sighting, there was a lot more. And my experiences, a lot happened after that sighting. And then there was also a large gap between 97 when I saw that light being and let's say 2021. Not much happened as far as sightings, and then it all started to start up again in 2021 as far as physical sightings.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, where would you like to go next?
Um well, let's see. I could talk about the dreams I had after that first sighting, which are kind of interesting. Or
Yeah, whatever is interesting. I know you have some pretty cool stuff to share. So,
okay, so I had a couple of interesting dreams just after. I'll tell you one where where I had that sighting was in a park. We lived down the street from that park. And shortly after my sighting, uh, I had a dream where across the street, from the street that the park is on, um, there was a lamp stand or a light, one of those lights, like a street light.
mhm.
And there was this man in the dream standing under the street light. And in my head, it looked like Jesus. He had, the stereotypical white Jesus.
Mhm.
I'm not sure what Jesus looks like, but what stereotypically he's been portrayed as with the long blonde
Yeah.
hair, bit of a beard. Like he had strawberry blonde hair, strawberry blonde beard, and then blue eyes, and slightly tan skin. Very nice looking, actually. And I I walk up to him. So it's I'm on this under this lampstand, or he's under the lampstand, and I'm walking towards him. And when I get in front of him, he says to me, "I want you to turn the pavement into sand." And I'm like, "Excuse me, I don't know how to do that." He's like, "Just do it." I'm like, "Okay." So I look down at the pavement and I imagine it turning to sand, and then it does. And then he says, "Okay, come with me." And we walk down the street to like, which is about a half a mile long, and the park is at the end of it. So we walk halfway down that street towards the park where I had the sighting. And on the left-hand side, there's a row of houses all along the street, of course. And we walk up to one of these houses, and he goes in, and then I follow him. I go up the steps. I I get into the foyer again, and it's the same size 5 by 5 by 9 foyer. As I walk into this, I remember who I am. And all of a sudden I'm like, "Oh," and I know who I am. And I walk into the house. I make a left, and there's a large living room, dining room kind of situation, beautiful hardwood floors, the whole bit. And there's a round table in the middle of the room and a wood table, and there's four chairs around it. And it's a great big wood table with four nice big comfy chairs. And in the in the west position is a woman with white, like hair like mine, basically, but white.
Mm-hmm.
and with really broad cheekbones, blue eyes, and beautiful. And she's about, just looks about 70. And opposite her on the east is a man who looks almost identical to her, but he's male with the same broad cheekbones, blue eyes, and similar hair, and no bangs, just straight hair down to here, but
Mm-hmm.
without the bangs. She has the bangs. And I sit on the, I guess that's the south, and Jesus sits, who I think is Jesus, sits on the north. The guy, this blonde haired guy, sits on the north. And the woman on the left or west of me says to me, all she says is one word, report. And then, so for half an hour, I reported to her on something. I I had all this information. I talked and talked and talked for about half an hour. And then she said, "Oh, okay, that's fine. You can go." So I get up, I walk out the door. When I pass through the foyer, I lose everything. Everything I said is wiped out. So all I knew is that happened. I spoke. I told her things. They listened.
Uh-huh.
They thanked me, said I could go. And then when I left, everything was wiped out of my mind. So I have no idea what I told her.
Hang on. When you went in, you said, I remembered who I am.
Yeah,
Who were you?
I don't remember. So when I,
That's okay.
like I know I remembered. I'm like, oh, okay. And so I went in and I reported on something. When I walked through that foyer again, everything was wiped clean, including the memory of who I was. All I remembered was remembering I had remembered it, but didn't.
So I hear what you're saying. That
Yeah.
sounds to me like what some people report when they have a near-death experience,
Wow.
where um I mean, some people, depending on they might be meeting with Jesus or their spiritual team, but they are shared sort of wisdom about the reality of life. And then if they are given the option to return or whatever, you can ask whatever you want, but when you go back, you're not going to remember.
Yeah.
And that's what
Yeah.
makes me think of is
Yeah.
people's reports of what happens to them in some of their near death experiences. That's really interesting. I've never heard that like during your lifetime that this was just in a dream. This wasn't, you didn't, there was no physical trauma or anything that happened that induced that.
Unless I died at night and didn't know, and I don't know, but I don't
I don't know,
think
but
so.
that's super interesting.
Cool.
So
Yeah.
what did you make of that though? I mean,
Again, it's like it's wild. I mean, it made me realize, well, first of all, maybe I'm here for a reason. It made me feel like I was here for on a mission of some sort, that I was here working, that I wasn't just here living and just love. I am living my life and so on, but I felt like there was another aspect to it,
mm,
that there was, and it made me of course curious to understand what they meant by, like, like what I remembered. Like I want to know, like, well, if I'm not me, then who, kind of thing.
who
You know
am
what I
I?
mean? So and I'm still trying to figure that one out. So
I mean,
the
that
thing
sounds
is,
very lucid.
yeah, it was and this is all in full technicolor and so on. It feels very real.
Wow. So at this point, how is this informing? I mean, I would imagine my curiosity would just be spiked.
Well, of course, this is within probably a month of my sighting, so I'm obsessing now, right? At this point. I mean, I went on from 92 to 90, let's say 98. I just obsessed about the subject. And then in 98 I went back to university and ended up getting my undergrad and then my master's. So I got busy and I just didn't have time to read any other book but school books, and so my thoughts just really focused on that, on my education, and then I got a job. And then that took up all my mental energy. And it's only in the last few years, since 21, well, actually, probably 2018, I started back into the topic. And then in 2021, I started having more experiences, more sightings, and so on.
What happened to get you back in?
Well, it was
What was the sighting?
well, what got me back in was the the WikiLeaks and the TTSA uh, launch, and then the article from the New York Times about the UFOs and so on. All of that
Oh,
sort
the
of pulled
Nimitz.
the Nimitz and all that. All that pulled me back in, and it took me a while. I started just like, oh, okay, sort of like this is going on, but I was still working, and I was in a stressful job, and I was managing a department, and so it took me a while to really start getting back into it, but I started reading and getting onto UFO Twitter, and you know listening to podcasts and so on, and
Yeah.
by 2021, January 2021, I really started in on it. I started on a with on the Richard Dolan website, and then got me to an online conference, and then eventually into real life conferences once COVID was done. And then but it was in 2021 when things started to really ramp up again for me.
What happened then?
Just a bunch of different sightings, plus those I had, for the audience, I had sent James some pictures, and these two incidences happened at that time. So if you
Yeah,
want,
okay.
I can tell you about those. So so I'm starting to read a lot about UFOs, and I'm starting to meditate more and all of this. And then so one night I went to bed as normal and woke up in the middle of the night, and 3 in the morning type of thing, and there was this object floating over me, but it wasn't like a solid object. It was uh like a bunch of lights in a sort of a kaleidoscope fashion, and it was just sort of undulating in front of me. It, like, I'm lying down, so I'm looking up at it, and it's just sort of so the round part is horizontally over me, so I'm just watching this, and it's
How
beautiful.
how big was it?
It was about 4 feet in diameter. Um,
Okay.
and it was about 3, 4 feet above me. So it just had just a good view. Sort of just below my ceiling kind of thing, mid, mid ceiling, like I have 9 foot ceiling. So maybe about 7 feet it was floating there.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was beautiful, reds and golds and greens and browns and all these colors, but in just a very rich colors, like not bright and fluorescent type colors, just very rich, deep colors. And the thing was just moving around like that for about 10 minutes. I watched it, and it reminded me of a kaleidoscope. It was absolutely stunning. And I just watched it. I didn't feel any emotion from it. I wasn't afraid because it was just so beautiful. I just wondered at it. I mean, I'm like, I'm thinking, what am I seeing here? This is absolutely an incredible display.
I mean, it sounds like you were mesmerized, but it is a mesmerizing photo.
Yeah, yeah. And then it just receded at some point, and I went back to sleep again.
So there
And,
was no like telepathic communication or anything. It was just observing this
yep,
object.
yep, yep. I didn't know. Maybe it was something my brain was doing. Like, I don't know, right? It it wasn't physical, but it was just a swirl of colors, like a kaleidoscope, and moving around, and it was absolutely stunning. So I'm not
Yeah.
sure. Is that my brain? Some sort of psychological thing? I don't know. Didn't seem like it, but
Not that I mean that I think if you were hallucinating, you would know there was something going on.
right. It was like a almost, yeah, like that kind of um, yeah, like you hear about people. I've never done any drugs like that anyways, and hallucinogens, but to see all the swirling colors, but maybe
Well,
something like that.
yeah, I mean, if you were under the influence of that at the time, it might make more sense. But there's a pattern to it. I mean, like that's, and like you think of like angels and sacred geometry and colors. A lot of times, people that talk about angels they associate them with colors, but that's just speculating with that. I mean, it almost looks like a portal or something like that. Like it's fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. I don't have no idea what it was. It's never happened again.
Hmm.
I just remember it was just so incredibly beautiful. I
And
just
this was okay. This was you said 21
Probably, yeah, it was a few
around
years
then.
ago. So around 2020, 2021, something like that.
Interesting.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
did you make of that?
I don't know. I mean, alive. I had been, seeing stuff at that point. The light being the different craft, and I had that, voice talking to me. So I just assumed it's along the lines of that phenomena.
One more thing.
Yeah. And it was, I mean, I started with the Experiencer group, the J. Christopher King Experiencer group. I don't know if you've heard of it, but
No.
when I started with him and started talking about my experiences, and reading more about the phenomena, I realized, well, maybe it's just all tied into the phenomena. I don't know, but it's just became. I mean, it's not commonplace, but it's not. It doesn't feel unexpected anymore, or
Hmm.
it's more like I'm always happy when something like that happens because it's kind of yeah, it's exciting. It's because it's incredibly beautiful and it's magical, and
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, not all of my dreams have been beautiful and magical. I've had some very, very, very dark stuff, but not
Yeah.
for another time. But
Well, I mean, you're welcome to go there. So do you consider yourself an experiencer?
I do, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Correct.
I mean, because I've seen a being, the light being, and then I had those voices, and I've had other experiences and all
Yeah.
the dreams, and then all the sightings. I mean, 8 or 9 sightings. So it when you start adding it up and putting all the dreams together, when I start putting it all together, yeah, I start to realize, yeah, I'm an experiencer of some sort. I'm not an abductee as far as I know. I don't
Hmm.
think I've ever been abducted, but I don't know that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, are you familiar with Chris Bledsoe and that story?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean he seems to be like a magnet, right? For just phenomenon. It sounds like, on some degree you are as well. Um, which
he
is
he he has a magnetic quality to him. I met him last year at Contact in the Desert, and there is something very, he's an incredibly kind individual,
yeah.
very empathetic, and yeah, a very interesting individual. Yeah.
Yeah, his whole story is fascinating. I would imagine people watching this probably know who he is, but he wrote a book, UFO of God, but his whole story,
Yeah.
because when you're talking about observing these things too, right? Like you want to make sure that you're hearing these fantastic stories, right? Do these people sound credible? Are they crazy? Like, and there's a lot of, potentially like embarrassment even sharing about them, which I think part of what's really helpful, I hope for you and for other people to hear this is that it's cathartic and you're not crazy and these things people observe them and, are
Yeah.
of sound mind. But his experience with MUFON and being I don't know, I won't say wronged, but I don't know, but just, kind of cast aside as this liar when if you just observing him and hearing him talk sounds very credible. like just like it's not in his bones to tell a lie or anything like that. So it's
No.
really interesting. And I've not met him, but that's very interesting that you say that about him.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe his story. And he
Oh yeah.
describes a moment when he collapses to the ground as well. I think when the lady popped through with as Hathor. So at one point, he sees come through the woods is this great big bull with horns and so on. And then this bull changes to the lady, which is this a woman who's all in white
Mm-hmm.
and blonde hair, blue eyes, and floating, I guess, if 3 feet off the ground. And I think when he sees her, he falls to the ground as well. To me, that was when I heard that story, when he said that, or when I don't know if I read that or he had said it in a podcast. I realized that's when I realized, okay, because I had collapsed, I had done the same thing. And I think something in the human body, when you encounter something like that, it's a I think it's some sort of primal thing. You could almost imagine, you know, uh, maybe a monkey might react in the same way if we showed it something really like astonishing, right? Not that we're monkeys, but you know what I mean. Like,
I'm thinking about those goats that like fall over when they get
yeah,
startled. It's just like,
they have a neurological disorder, but yeah, kind of
yeah.
something like that. I had a dog who had the same disorder actually.
Oh no.
Yeah, so I'd go to throw the ball and he'd just like, cause he was a cattle dog. So I'd throw the ball and he'd be like, wow, I gotta go get the ball. And as soon as he did that, he'd stiffen right up and fall over,
Yeah.
so I learned I'd have to throw the ball really, get him running, throw the ball and he'd go after it and he wouldn't collapse. But
Oh
the
my gosh.
excitement of going after the ball would cause him to have the muscles basically spasm
Mm,
and it causes them to fall over. And
interesting.
the goats have the same issue.
So, but Chris Bledsoe had that experience that caught your attention, like, oh, that happened to me.
Yeah, well, the fact that he had collapsed at some point in his story upon, I think upon seeing the lady for the first time, um, it made me realize, oh, okay, that's interesting. That's not something a guy is normally going to admit to. Yeah, look, I fell to the ground,
Yeah.
So to me, that was like, oh, okay, that's a response that I had. So it suggested to me that he was telling the truth about his story.
And you mentioned, I think the name Hathor is that what he calls her, the lady in white?
Uh, well, he believes the bull that came through might have been Hathor. He doesn't
Okay.
know. This is just his speculation. Uh,
Okay.
and he doesn't believe the lady is Mary, the mother of God.
Mm,
He just calls her the lady in white, the lady. He calls her the lady.
okay.
So he's not ascribing any, and even though he has a religious background, he is not ascribing any identity to the lady. He doesn't know who she is.
Hmm. Well, the videos and photos that he captures almost, I mean, they're incredible, that he posts online on his Instagram and things like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And Twitter too. He's on Twitter too.
And he's on Twitter. And Richard Dolan did a series, I think 4 interviews with him. And I think those are some of the most comprehensive interviews with uh, David Bledsoe, if anyone's interested. I believe you could see the Richard Dolan interviews on YouTube. And I don't
Okay.
think there's a charge for anything if anyone's interested. They're really
Okay.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. If I find it, I can put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Now you had sent me another photo, which is also fascinating. What's the story behind that?
So that happened a few months after that first one I sent, the one with the kaleidoscope of colors.
Mhm.
And it was a kind of the same thing. 3 o'clock in the morning, this being is sort of hovering over me about 3 or 4 feet above my body, sort of eh, like it's hovering over me, so kind of flying over me, and it's this about my size, but it's 3 feet above me, and it's hard to describe, but it was in this sort of magenta color, bluish, purplish, and there was a mixture of colors. Uh, it, kind of maybe more towards magenta. It was sort of almost pink too. It's hard to describe. It was a mixture, and it's the wings aren't solid. It's like wispy, kind of wispy sort of wings, um, and it had two sets of wings. So they were flying, and so I could see the wings flying like that. They weren't flying like this, but like alongside like that. It
Like
was
it was keeping itself in position almost. Like,
yeah, yeah, but it was just yeah. I can't even describe it like a because it's not solid, right? So it's just I don't know the wording, but
yeah.
like a mist almost, you know. But in the but anyways, it hovered over me for a few minutes, and I again just watched it. But this time I did have an emotion that was coming from it. And it was just this pure love emotion. And it just felt really great to be in its presence. And it didn't last long, maybe 3, 4 minutes. And then again, it just faded away like it lost containment or something. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, it looks angelic, or I mean, with the wings, two sets of wings. I think the word fairy comes to mind, but
Fairy-like, yeah, fairy-like. It was beautiful. And you know, about 5 feet long, because it's over me, 5.5 feet long, about the size of my body. Yeah, it
mhm.
was really cool. And again, I don't know what it is, so I just you know, wow, that was really cool and
Yeah,
incredibly beautiful, and the emotion coming from it was just this incredible love. A real sensation of love, which I had never, in any of my accounts, I had not felt anything. It was all very neutral.
yeah. Because I was curious, like what was there something being communicated?
I didn't get any thoughts. I just marveled at it. I mean, it
Hmm.
was so incredibly beautiful.
Wow. Have there been others like this? I mean, these are incredible, but
And that's it. Those two, yeah, that was it. It's not happened again. I wake up and look. If I wake up at 3 in the morning, I'm always looking for something, but no,
yeah.
just those 2 times. So,
Wow.
yeah.
I mean, I mean, it's so fascinating that you've had so many, and there's a lot more experiences that I know that you've had and shared. But these are just incredible that you've been able um to experience different kinds of phenomena too.
Yeah. No, it's true. And that, um, yeah, you, some critics will say, well, okay, people, they experience this and they experience that and they this and this and this. How come some people are getting all these experiences? And I don't know. I just feel mostly blessed that I get to experience all these different things. Um, I mean, I've had some, like I've said, I've had a, a couple of really dark, scary dreams, and so probably could live without those ones. But I think I would rather know the entirety of creation if these things are real. Then I think it's good to know all aspects of it, not just the one side. But the other side is kind of hard to cope with sometimes.
Um, I just had a woman named Jacqueline Smith on who
Yeah.
is an experiencer and a hypnotherapist, and she talks about kind of, people want to have experiences, and in some sense, just you want to be a little bit careful about what you ask for. Like all things, there are, good and maybe bad in very simple terms. Um, but it might be helpful for people to, hear maybe some of the negative, or what, is the perception of bad or negative, just because if other people are experiencing it and they may not know what to make of it and kind of
Hmm.
what to do about it. So, I mean, you're welcome to share about that if you don't mind.
I mean, I don't mind at all. It's pretty dark, some of it, so but I'm happy to share it. Um,
Uh, well, whatever you think would be helpful for people to know.
okay. Well, the first one I had, I was, let's see, it was in 1980, probably 1985, January or February in Toronto. And so what am I? I'm 22 at this point, and I'm staying at a friend's house in downtown Toronto, and I'm sleeping in the living room on a mattress on the floor. And it's probably about 6 in the morning, maybe 7 in the morning. The sun's just coming up. So it must have been 7:30 in the morning, something like that. And I um so in the dream, it's a dream, and in the dream my father is trying to resuscitate my brother, who is can't breathe. And he tells me to go and get an ambulance, go and call for an ambulance or get an ambulance. So we're in a house, but it's not our house. I run down the stairs and out onto the street to get an ambulance. And across the street, there's no other houses. It's just an empty field. And it's winter time in Canada, so it's kind of like a gray outside, brown, like a sort of a pale brown and gray. Everything's like there's no color. It's nothing's green. It's kind of dull. And there's three ambulances parked across the street. All three ambulances are gray, and there's three gray nuns in each ambulance. So the nuns are gray, and their habit is gray, and they're in a gray ambulance, and there's three of them. And it's the old style ambulance. I don't know if you
Mm,
like something from the 60s, so the long, long, long ones.
okay.
Uh, And and my roommate all of a sudden appears. And she's a couple of years older than me, and she's kind of like an older sister sort of person in my life. So kind of looking out for me. And she sees me and takes sort of goes to hug me, but then wraps her arms around me and sort of buries my head so I can't look. And so she buries my head like that, and she says to me, "The dark one is coming. The dark one is coming. Don't look at him or you'll never look up again." And but even though she had my head covered, I could see this thing coming from behind me, and it's this man who's about 7 feet, or a being of some sort that's about 7 feet tall, and he's riding a fly, and the fly is big enough to carry him. So it's a great big fly and a 7 foot tall demon like being riding it. And it has, for its face, is the eye of a fly. I don't know if you've ever seen the eye of a fly. It's like the segmented. They don't have eyes. It's like a screen, and it's all segmented. That's what it looked like. And
Hmm.
it had like leathery, rubbery skin, and it had long, long talons with nails extending from them. And as he's flying by me, he as he comes close to me, he reaches into my back, through my back, and grabs my heart and pulls it out of my body. And I felt my soul going with the heart. And I battled for my soul for half an hour in the dream. And what I mean by that is I kept just saying the Lord's Prayer because I didn't know what else to do. So I just said the Lord's Prayer over and over again for about half an hour. And it was just this battle for my soul. And then eventually he threw it back in my body with this surge of hate. And when that happened, I kind of woke up like that, like straight up in bed, and then went back down because it was so painful. And when I opened my eyes, there was a great big fly in the middle of winter in Canada. And the fly was about almost an inch in diameter, a house fly. I've never seen a fly that big, and it was circling me like this.
What?
And then it just flew through a closed window out to the outside. Right?
These.
So it's a dream, but then I'm watching this fly circling me, this great big fly. So am I still asleep? And I'm still dreaming? I'm in that in-between state, and I have this horrible pain in my heart. Now, did I have a heart attack? And that's what my body did to interpret a heart attack? I've had EKGs. There's been no registered heart attack on my heart. So
Yeah.
So I don't know. But
I mean,
let me
Kate,
tell you,
go ahead.
that scared the hell out of me. I couldn't sleep for weeks afterwards.
Yeah, I think it would scare any one of us. That's fascinating that it's the dream, but then you wake up in pain with the fly.
Yeah.
So, like, you could see the fly and it
Yeah.
flew out a window.
Yeah.
That's
I know.
that is one of those I feel like paranormal things, right? Where you feel like flies or sometimes insects are involved, where it's like, in a kind of haunting or something like that, where they might notice something. But that's pretty. I mean, it was surreal, but it wasn't. It was real. Like that is a fascinating dream. I'm curious if people listening, might know more about like that type of phenomenon. But that's almost like this spiritual battle taking place within you.
It really felt like it. It really did. And I mean, I definitely know like the Lord's Prayer, it was that saved me. Now, I don't think it's just, uh, Christianity. Perhaps if I was Hindu, there might be a prayer that I would say. I don't think it probably doesn't matter. But to me, I think that's what saved me. And it was pissed off that I wouldn't let go. I knew I was fighting in my dream. I felt like I was fighting for my very soul.
Like your existence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was that maybe the last battle, would you say, or did that happen again? Because I know you said there was a previous dream, I think, where you said like demons were circling your house.
There were demons. That was when I was a kid, and then this happened, and then there's been 2 or 3 others. The one that happened, so the one that happened next happened after my first sighting. So I had a couple of incredibly beautiful spiritual dreams, and then I had maybe about a year after my sighting, I had a dream of a man. Again, this was a man, a gray man. So he was gray. He looked like a human, but he was gray. Everything about him was gray. He was wearing a gray suit. He was tall, 6 foot, maybe 6'2". And we were walking towards, we're on some sort of base, and we're walking towards a building, and we go into the building and then down. There's nothing else around, just this building on this, what looks like a base of some sort of military base. And the building's made of glass, actually. And We walk into the building. We go down an escalator, really, really, really long escalator, right down to the bottom. And we turn the corner, and there's a vat, a huge vat, 10 by 10, filled with babies that had been skinned alive but were still living, and they were all writhing in this vat. I mean, it was horrific.
Mm.
And then we went into a room, and I don't remember anything after we went into this room. That dream, even though it's a very short dream, it was horrific.
Yeah.
And it was the gray man again. It's the same feeling as with those three gray nuns and the demon riding the fly. It had that same feeling to it. So it was just this darkness. But I don't remember anything beyond that. Once we went into that room, I have no idea what happened in that room.
There is like a story going around on the internet right now, that people are relating to, that they've had these dreams, and it's in regards to I think Aaron Rodgers, the football quarterback, did an ayahuasca journey
Oh, really?
and had an experience with an entity called the Hat Man, which
Oh,
I was not familiar with the Hat Man, but other people online that I follow on Twitter mentioned that they've had experiences, or other people have had experiences with this. I
mhm.
had never heard of that. But is that like the gray man? Is that something like something similar to that? Or like have other people had experiences with the gray man that you know of?
Well, I know some people when you know, I can't remember who I've told this to, but or maybe I just consider this. Uh, so a lot of times when people have abductions, they have screen memories. Um, perhaps I had been abducted. I don't know. Um, because the gray man, gray, wearing gray, I mean, the tall grays. So I don't know if maybe my brain was like I had a screen memory because I couldn't deal with maybe it
Hmm.
was actually gray. So that's a possibility. Um,
So these are uh okay, like a memory that's supposited versus what really happened type of thing, so that you don't remember it.
Possibly given by them, or our own brains just can't handle it, so it replaces it with something it can manage.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I'm not sure. Or they could not. I haven't heard. I've heard about the Hat Man, but I haven't read anything about it. But now I will, of course. So I don't know who this guy was, and I don't know the significance of the vat of babies. Why I see this? Like, why am I seeing this? What happened when I went into that room? I don't know. But there was that darkness. That's what it was. It had that feeling, that same feeling of darkness about it.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I guess all you can do is sort of speculate.
That's the thing, right? It's a dream. Maybe it's just a dream. That's
Hmm.
the unfortunate thing when it's a dream is like, well, it could have just been, your mind fabricating. Maybe I'd seen a bad movie or something, like a horror movie. I don't like horror movies, but
I mean, I did think of the Jeff Goldblum movie, The Fly.
yeah,
Um,
sure, right?
but your mind, right, when you're shown something, is going to go to something that you can recall to kind of, make sense of what you're being told, or that kind of thing. But
Hmm.
yeah, no, that's so I mean, there are, I suppose, dark things, and let's say conspiracy theories, but just darker elements about things that, you know, allegedly exist and whatnot. But it's, curious that you have, in addition to these like beautiful, extraordinary, loving things, also this polarity with these other experiences. It is interesting. It's almost like you've gotten the full spectrum of experiences.
Or reality,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, right? Like they happened to you, so these are these are very, very real. Um, what do you are you still experiencing these things?
Um, the last dream I had, the last sighting I had was in Contact in the Desert this year. So no, last year, sorry, 2024, 2023. So June 2023 was the last sighting I had. And I had a really cool dream um just this summer. And I think that's probably it for experiences and dreams and sightings. So it's been relatively quiet this year
Hmm.
since Contact in the Desert, and which is odd, but it happens. You go through these quieter times.
Well, maybe quiet for you, but there's other stuff going
There's
on.
other stuff going on. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. You know, people were contacting me about the New Jersey stuff, and who knows? I'm not
Yeah.
entirely sure what to make of that, other than there is some interesting things happening on this, I guess, path to disclosure, which is, I mean, people have had so many experiences at this point. It's hard to, I don't necessarily look at it as a disclosure. It's like, I feel like that's for like other people. But we're clearly on this path towards, I think, more contact as more people open up to the idea that it's maybe not as scary as some people would like you to believe, um, opening up. And so I hope, that your story helps other people. For those listening, maybe that have had experiences, and where might you direct them to get more information or more kind of help, kind of making sense of things?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, the Experiencer group, if you just Google that, the Experiencer group,
Hmm.
um, they that's not just for UFO, it's for all paranormal experiences.
Okay.
And it's a great, great group. There's we meet and you can talk about your experiences. You can form connections with other people, and there's all these other subgroups based on the different types of experiences. There's one group just for abductees, one group for that have had more paranormal kind of stuff, or
Hmm.
it runs the gamut. There's a group just for women, because some of the experiences maybe are a little too personal to share in a group, and it's on Zoom, and there's a website, but the meetings are on Zoom, and so you can attend from all over the world, and that's been for me one of the most helpful groups I've ever been a part of.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it's helpful for people to see, or to hear and to see, other people's experiences, and whether it's also footage or photos and things that they can be like, oh my gosh, like I saw that too. Because they
Yep,
know
yep,
I mean, I'm didn't share all my experiences, but I know that when I saw footage online of something that I had seen, it validated me.
yeah,
Like, oh my God, like that's what I saw.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay. Like I'm not
yeah,
like, okay, I could put you know, a video to it and just kind of jog my memory a little bit. But
yeah. I mean, the other thing I would recommend is going to conferences, because that's where you get to meet other people. Like a lot of people that go to these conferences, either they're researchers, or they work with people who are experiencers and so on. But a lot of the people that are there are experiencers. So it's a good chance to really get to know other people and really get a chance to share your experiences, hear other people's, and yeah, it's quite, I find quite helpful.
yeah, and I guess I should share. Like I do work with experiencers as well as a therapist and hypnotherapist, and I know that there is a demand for professionals that are open and, that people can feel safe with talking to because of the stigma behind it. So there are people out there that can help
Hmm.
as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Kate, is there anything else you would like to share to others watching this? Like,
I guess the one thing I'd like to say is that even though I've had these dark experiences, I do believe that light or goodness will prevail over whatever darkness there might be out there. And I think mostly the phenomenon is good. Um, but like we were talking about earlier before we started, it's a big universe out there, and there's probably a lot of different things out there that we could encounter. And I think you just have to have a bit of discernment. You be careful. But
yeah.
I think generally there's probably a lot of good out there.
I would agree with that. And I definitely believe that. I'm optimistic in that way.
Me too.
One way that I've heard it is, humans are good, but there's some bad apples.
Exactly. I think it's the same sort of thing.
Yeah. Are you
Yeah.
familiar with Ruben Langdon at all?
I'm not, no.
Um, he's interesting. You might want to
I
check him
should
out.
write that down. Ruben.
Ruben Langdon and his he has a podcast called Interview with Extra Dimensionals, but you may find that interesting.
Oh, cool. I will check him out for sure.
Yeah, but there is a big universe, and
Yeah.
it's we're opening up to it, and I think the more people that there's the element of fear
Mm-hmm.
seems to be one of the sort of theories or the concepts, like as if they just showed up, it could be terrifying, right? And we all have our own belief systems about things. It could really be very disruptive.
Mm-hmm.
But as more people, I think, and maybe part of this sort of New Jersey drone stuff or whatever, it's kind of like in some ways desensitizing people to like, okay, there's things happening, you know, more people are opening up to that possibility of, okay, these things are actually going on. They've been going on for a long time. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's not as big of a leap for people to accept as part of my thought, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting times. I'm really curious about those drones. They or whatever, it seems to be a grouping of different things. So who knows? I'm very curious though.
I Yeah, I mean, we're calling them drones, but
Yeah.
some of the footage and some of the descriptions are,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. They don't sound like
They're not all drones. It does
no. Yeah. Yeah, call them drones if you need to, but you know, kind of thing. It's like I think that's become the catchphrase is like, oh, we'll call them drones and then people won't freak out. Because if you call them UAPs or UFOs or whatever, yeah, people are gonna be starting to freak out.
Well, they had, even so I'm down in Maryland. Our
Yeah.
our governor had one over his house or his property, and he
Wow.
was filming one, and it was just like, what is going on? And then all of a sudden, it just like seemingly stopped.
Yeah. Oh,
So
I don't
very
know.
curious things happening. So, and I think it will
Yes.
be an eventful time, but
It's gonna be an eventful year this year.
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Kate, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us and sharing your experiences. I hope this was helpful to those listening, and I can't say thank you enough.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It is for me, it's always helpful to talk about it. It feels cathartic.
Thank you so much for tuning in today and being with us. May you find joy, flow, and adventure on your journey. And if you got something from it, please like, share, and subscribe and or comment. It means a lot. Thank you.